Let's go get Osama, man. Come on.
Yeehaw! Hey everybody, your buddy Basil here, and you're listening to the Joyspiracy Theory. We've got an excellent episode with you here. Our guest today I've actually met in person, which I know we've done a couple other episodes like this, but this one's great because I met Omar at the same Michael Heiser conference that I met Mike Davis, the emotional intelligence expert. Many of you have become fans after listening to his episode here, and Omar is certainly a fan as well. But before we get into that, thank you to everybody supporting the Patreon page. Our newest supporter is Chelsea, and Chelsea has a cockatiel named Buddy. So what's up, Buddy? You might be our first feathered friend, unless I haven't been tracking that, but I think it's the first bird. So what's up, Buddy? Welcome to the Bird Club. She has a personal message here for her dad. She says, and this is in all caps, so I'm going to do my best. Hi, Dad. I love and miss you so much. Look, I told you I would meet Basil one day. See? There you go. She did. She did meet me over the internet, which is better than a lot of people can say. So, good job, Chelsea. And if you guys are interested in getting a message on the show or a shout out to your furry friends, you can go to patreon.com/thejoyspiracy theory. There's rewards up there. There's bonus episodes coming out. There's shout outs, messages. And I just saw that Patreon is testing a new beta live streaming service. So we might be able to work live streaming into the rewards program. So that's very exciting. Go over to patreon.com/thejoyspiracy theory and we can all work that out. Okay, you know what? I could tell you about our Facebook, but I'm going to make you wait. Rather than that, I'm going to tell you about the TJT prayer program. You can email tjtprayer@gmail.com to join our little prayer group. It's going awesome. Thank you, Kelsey, for running that. And there's also a Facebook group. So go ahead and search TJT Prayer on Facebook. Get connected there. All right, so we're going to get into the interview here with Omar. We talk about things like chick tracts, which a lot of you may know about. I didn't know that was the name, so I learned something. We talk about giving with tithing and word of faith movement, and we also talk about identity in the church, which is very interesting. This is going to be a good one. You'll find out later that Omar actually has his own podcast, and we'll give you links for that. I highly recommend everybody jump in there and check that out. But here we go. I think it's about time. You guys ready? Are you ready? Are you ready for this? Okay, let's go.
Oh,
Hello.
yes. Can you hear me now?
There we go. You sound great.
All right. Cool.
Perfect. Well, what's up, Omar? How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Yeah, you just I know we tried doing a call right before this. You had some crickets, had some internet issues. Are you all set now?
Yeah. I'm all set. I'm ready to go. It's because I was trying to do it outside because the baby's sleeping inside of the house. So
Oh, I see. Well,
you
we
know,
don't want to wake the baby. Well, that's awesome,
no,
man. What are you grateful for today?
what am I need you can answer this question. I had a
Oops.
lot of things, and I had a lot of things. So I don't know, man. I guess I'm grateful for having gone to church in the morning. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
good one.
yeah, that was so that yeah, I'm pretty grateful for that. All the dudes went on their men's retreat. So I stayed back, and so I pretty much ran the whole shebang by myself, which
Just
is
a
really
fox in the hen house, huh?
yeah. So I pretty much ran the whole thing, and it was great, man. It was awesome. It was a big
Awesome.
blessing to have been able to be used that way, you know.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great opportunity to be able to kind of lead things in the church like that. So, what do you do? What do you do at the church?
Well, I was just, I guess I was just helping. I helped opened it up. It's not a big church, man. It's just like about on a Sunday morning. There's around 50 people maybe that go there.
Sure. Yeah, that's good though. That's actually kind of an average church, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess. I mean, I've only been going there for about a year and a couple of months, and the church I used to go to, there was like thousands of people there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
One of those big big establishments.
Oh yeah, for sure. So on this one, there's only a little bit of people. It was about 50 people, and just helped out, man. Just got there early, opened up, made sure everything was ready to go for the teacher that they had that morning, and pretty much made sure everything ran smooth, and then
Good deal.
at the end of the
Good
day.
deal. Well, who's the little baby that's sleeping that you're not trying to wake?
Oh, that's my daughter. Yeah, it's my daughter, man.
Aww. How old is she?
She's about 2 months now. I think 2 months and a couple of
Oh, it's
weeks.
just a little one.
Yeah, yeah, she's my second one. I have another one. She's about 3 years old. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah,
Whoa.
Dylan was eating a slice of pizza. Oh, sorry, did it break?
Yeah, careful of the microphone there.
Sorry about that.
That's all good. So here's a fun fact. We actually met, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
It was at the Michael
was able
Heiser
to-
thing.
Yeah, I was actually able to see your glorious face.
Oh boy. Better keep that trap shut.
Well,
Well, that was cool. So
yeah, I saw you coming down the street, and I was like, and there was like a glow about you, and I was like,
oh,
I saw you and Gons, I was like, who
yeah,
are these guys? I know.
it's hard to hide when I'm with Gons. Everybody knows what Gons looks like. So they just assume when there's
Yeah.
a tall, goofy looking guy next to him that it's me.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, man. I was a little bit of starstruck. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, I saw you guys, and I was like, I've been listening to these guys for a couple of years now, and I was like, these are like my friends.
Your secret friends.
Yeah, it's so weird because like I hear you guys. I've been hearing you guys forever, and almost on a daily basis sometimes.
Sure.
And then we get to meet you guys in certain occasions like that, and you're just like, oh man, I know everything about you, but you know nothing of me.
Yeah, it can be a little weird. I've actually met a few podcast people that I listen to them all the time, and they just don't. I'm just a number. I'm just a number on a graph to them.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So I totally get it. Well, now you're more than a number on a graph, buddy. Now we're official friends, and you are now a co-podcaster.
Yes, that is true. That is true.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, that Michael Heiser thing was great. That was the one in Orange County.
Yeah, that was it.
Where was it? Capistrano? San Juan Capistrano? Somewhere around there.
Yeah, where what is it? Where the water flows like honey.
Something like that.
And the women flock like the sea bass or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, it's interesting. That was a fruitful event for me. First, I met you and your buddy, and what was your buddy's name again?
His name was Chuck.
Chuck? Okay. Met Omar and Chuck. But that's where I also met Mike Davis, who's been on this show a couple times. He was there at that event.
Yes.
And that's where he and I connected. So it was a good trip, apparently.
No, it was divinely inspired, I think.
Amen, brother. So where are you from? Are you in Southern California?
Yeah. I live here in the Riverside area.
Okay, so I believe they call that the Inland Empire.
Yeah, the Inland Empire, Riverside. This is where I grew up, so this is where I stayed.
Nice. So you're just a Southern California boy. It's not very. I can't even tell you if I've had another Southern California person on the show.
Really?
Oh, Byron Rogers.
Yeah, Byron.
And Gons, of course.
Yeah.
So awesome, man. So yeah. We spent some time in the same area there for a while. I had a buddy who lived up in the mountains, kind of by Riverside there. So I know that Riverside area.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that's cool, man. So you got two little daughters. That's awesome. What do you got? You got a wife?
Yes, a wife.
Nice work.
Yeah, pretty good so far.
It's working out.
No, yeah, she's awesome. My wife is incredibly awesome. She's a very, she does a very good job.
Uh-oh, you're
and taking care of the house and the kids and all that.
Your connection lost for a second there. Why don't you tell me about your wife one more time?
No, I just said she's a very godly woman. She's a great woman. Yeah, she helps keep the house in order, keep the kids in order. So yeah, it's great, man. She's a good.
There you go. Very good. Very good. Um, cool. So when did you guys get married? Are you a young couple? What's your deal there?
Yeah, I met her in church actually. I met her in church when I was 11 and she was 9. And
What? 11 and 9?
yeah, dude, that's a long story right there in itself. I met her when I was 11 and she was 9, and we pretty much grew up together. So we've known each other. But then right around the age of 21, I think, no, I was 19 and I left. And then we've always been really good friends. And then I joined the military, and when I came back, she was still available, and I was like, all right, you're mine now.
She was still available. Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, yeah. So we've always been good friends, and so we just started dating, and then we got married. So we've been married
Nice. So you guys were going to youth group together and stuff?
Yeah. We grew up in the youth group together. We did the whole thing. Pretty much every year, your modern day evangelical slash Pentecostal megachurch type of deal. Grew up doing that. We did it together. We were both ushers, did the whole youth group thing, did all of that.
Yeah, that's interesting because, first of all, growing up and finding somebody who's also a Christian, you kind of you share that experience. Although if you didn't go to the same church, then you really kind of had really different experiences, just because every church is so different. But to marry somebody who you straight up went to the same youth group with, had the same pastors, same youth group leader, same everything. I mean, that's like, you're on the same page at that point.
Yeah. We were both. We actually both started in the Sunday school, like in the little kids school. So we
Right.
were both started in Sunday school. Then went into the youth ministry, and then we both became ushers and helpers at our churches, and back from there on. So we were always great friends. We were always good friends, but never any romantic things happened
Sure.
or anything
So
like
you were
that.
like
So
straight up friends when you were that young. It wasn't just like, oh, you happened to be near age in the same church, but were you like friends?
oh no, yeah, for sure, because we grew up together. I mean, we grew up with the same group of friends. All the guys and girls. We all grew up together. So we were totally friends.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah, I
Good.
know. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty trippy, man. That doesn't happen all the time. Well, awesome.
No,
Awesome,
no, it
awesome.
doesn't. Man.
So, so you obviously grew up in a church environment. What was the family life like? What was it like back then?
Well, I guess the whole reason we started going to church, 'cause I started church when I was like 11 years old, right? The whole reason why was because my dad, he used to be an alcoholic. He used to like drink a lot,
Right.
and he wasn't like the type of abusive guy or anything like that. But he just didn't. It's kind of like when he drank, it was done. That's a wrap. He wasn't around for like 3 days, and
Mm,
then he'd all of a sudden come back on a Monday because he had to go to work. And so that's how I grew up at the age of like, from the earliest I can remember up until like 9 years old. And him and my mom, because of my dad's drinking problem, and he also had a gambling problem, they separated. So me and my mom and my two younger sisters and myself, we went down because my mom's from Mexico. So then we went down. My mom grabbed us and was like, "All right, we're done." So she separated from him and we went to live down in Mexico. And my
oh,
dad stayed behind. Yeah, dad stayed behind here. He was living in Montclair over here in Ontario, and he stayed here. And he was like at the very bottom, as I guess at the very bottom a man can get. And he was around my right now. I'm 33, and he was like around 36 when this happened. So I can kind of see his right now. And he stayed back. He stayed behind here in the states, and he rented a room, and in a set of apartment buildings, and that guy that he rented the room from, he used to go to a Christian church, and that guy invited my dad to go, and my dad was kind of like, like all Hispanic people mostly are, traditional Catholics, and my dad said, I, have nothing to lose, might as well go, right? So he went, and man, like, his life changed. His life changed completely. And I remember he went to go visit us 6 months later during Christmas time, and like he was a completely different person. And so 6 months after that, we back together with him, and we all got back together. We all came back to the States, and we've been living with him since. And he stopped drinking, he stopped smoking, gambling. I mean, like, really, Jesus Christ did a really, really big change in his life. And my mom saw that, and so, they decided to get back together again. And so
Whoa,
that's,
really?
yeah, so that's the whole reason we started going to church with him. It took a while for my mom to go to church. It took like about almost 2 years, a year and a half. It was pretty funny though, because like she saw that my dad was like became a Christian, right? And I would remember seeing this as a kid, and she would like instigate him, like she like on purpose do things in order to see if she can rile him up, And she would take us.
Oh God, that's bad news.
Yeah, it was. It was pretty bad, and she would take us to mass on purpose. And my dad was like, "All right, I'm gonna take the kids to a church, right?" And mom was like, "Oh no, we're going to mass, a Catholic mass." And my dad's like, "You've never gone to church?" Like, "Oh no, but we're gonna start going." And so,
that's I gotta say, man, it sounds like your dad was having some troubles. Obviously, your mother has a good reason to be upset, but then he cleans up his act, and it kind of seems like he just can't catch a break
yeah,
still.
yeah, for sure, man. And so that's how it was for like a year and a half. My dad really had to really prove to her, that he really did change. And I can, in hindsight, I can see why my mom, was like that,
Yeah, I
because he
mean, you kind
was.
of got to protect yourself at that point.
Oh, for sure, dude, for sure. And so that's what she was trying to do. She was trying to protect the family. He's probably like, oh no, this guy's not changed. He's one day, sooner or later, he's gonna get back on the bottle. And
Right.
he did it. And that's when I guess my mom really did see that it was Jesus that changed his life. It just wasn't his own will or his 80s type of deal. Not bashing on that type of stuff, but
Right.
it was
Sure.
really God that really in his heart. So
Yeah.
then after that, my mom started going to church more, and then she started letting us go to church more, and that's when I met my wife, at that church. I was sitting down on some steps, drawing, sketching some. It was like a Disney character, and I saw her walking in with her school uniform. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm drawing." And she looked at me. She's like, "Oh, you traced that?" And I got so offended. I'm like, "No, I didn't trace this. I drew this." And she's like, "Nah, you traced it." And she
This is
walked away, and I was
straight up
like,
freehand Mickey
"Yeah."
Mouse.
Yes, it was. It was like a Simba from Lion King. I was like, and then I
Nice.
remember I got heated. My 11-year-old self got heated and offended. I was like, "No, this is real. This came out of my imagination."
That's good. So it sounds like your wife was a little sassy as a little girl too.
She's really sassy. Yeah, so that's how we started. Yeah, that's how we started going to that church, man.
Right
Because
on. Well,
of
that's
that.
cool, man.
And
And
so seeing
so
that change my, yeah.
that was the church that your dad was bringing you to.
Yeah, and that's the whole reason I started going to that church, and really like around like I started going around 11, and I didn't really get serious till like the age of 13. So like if anything, I could say I was like saved at the age of 13. That's when I really started like really trying to understand this whole God thing. And because I saw the change in my dad, and I saw the change in my mom, and I was like, whoa, this thing is real, right? There has to be something to it, because my dad became a completely different person from being an alcoholic and a gambler and like just a depressed sad person. He became a person full of joy, full of happiness, and he
Right.
became a person that wanted to actually do stuff with us now. So he'd take us fishing. He would do it. It was just a different person. I was like, whoa, who is this? Who is this Jesus that changes hearts? So I
Nice.
started. I started getting serious, and I remember, yeah, it was around the age of 13, and then um, that's when I really decided to start looking for God.
Nice, man. Well, so you had this Catholic mother and
Yeah.
evangelical or Protestant father. Did this Catholic versus Protestant thing ever reconcile, or or is this kind of a division
Yeah,
that
it did.
carried on?
Yeah. No, no, it did. My mom, she stopped going to mass. She stopped doing all that stuff. She started going to church, and then I still had a lot of questions. So my dad, in the beginning, he'd actually take us to like Christian libraries, and so I've always been a reader and all that stuff, and so I would load up on the chick tracks. I don't know if you remember those.
No, what is that?
The chick tracks, they're like little pamphlets, and they have
Oh,
like this is your life, and
yeah,
they have a
yeah,
lot of
tracks.
different
Okay, we
they're
just
like
we just
comic
call
books.
them
Yeah, the
tracks
track.
where I come from.
Okay, well, where I come from, we call them chick tracks. So not because they're for chicks, but the name of the guy who wrote them, his name was Jack Chick. So
Okay, got it. Yeah,
yeah, they're
okay.
not they don't have
I'll have
nothing.
to look them
They
up.
have,
Read some tracks.
yeah, they're pretty good. Well, I mean, if you look at them now, knowing what you know, you're like, I don't know about this, I don't know about that, but the message was pretty good. But at the time, it blew my mind because there was a bunch of just straight up information. Like a lot of books that were because Christian libraries, they have a lot of like different type of books and stuff. Just yeah, so I had to reconcile myself with Catholicism. So I started reading a lot of books on Catholicism versus Christianity type of deal.
Right, interesting. Now, so that's funny. So you were like pretty much already committed to Christ, or at least in the search of Him, and so you went and started reading tracts. I mean, I don't know about anybody else out there, and look, I know for a fact that tracks have led people at least on the search for Jesus, but some of them can be pretty bad. Some of them are
Yeah,
pretty
man.
cheesy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like if you look on hindsight now, if you were to grab one now, and the ones that something that like when I was reading, I was 13, is like, whoa, it's talking about Leviathan and dinosaurs. You're like, what? It blows my mind. No way, dinosaurs and humans. And then talking about the Catholic Church and nuns and stuff like that. You're like, whoa. But yeah,
That's
you're looking
so
back now, it's like,
funny.
I don't
You,
know.
there's
Yeah.
just like whole swaths of theology that you were getting from tracks
Yeah,
from this one guy.
yeah, yeah, for sure, and a lot of different books. Also a lot of different type of books that dealt with those type of subjects, mostly based on religion. Mostly
Sure,
based like
sure.
on Catholicism,
You know what's
Mormonism,
funny?
evangelicalism.
Yeah, did you ever see the tracks that folded up and they looked like a dollar bill or like $100 bill?
Yeah, man, I hate those because you look at them, you're like, oh, I found $5, and it's like a chick track, and you're like, oh, what is
Dude,
this?
to this day, I still find some of those, like in public restrooms or whatever. There'll be one like on the toilet paper dispenser, and I get so pumped. And then I open it, and I'm just like, oh, look, I know that this
Yeah,
is
I, th-
more
I think
valuable than $5 for like if it leads somebody to the Lord or at least whatever starts their journey or curiosity. But I'm super bummed now.
yeah, man. I mean, yeah, it's like, why do it? Just put $5 and write Jesus on there, and we'll be good.
Yeah, you could just use $5 and say, "You're welcome. Love Jesus."
Yeah, Jesus loves you. Yeah. Hey,
That's
that sounds good to
funny.
me.
All right, so you said you're a military man too. How'd you get into that? Well, first of all, so at 13, you're kind of going on this spiritual quest. Now, how did that go? Leading up to maybe like 18, were you a pretty straight kid back then? Didn't wasn't getting into had your nose in chick tracks too often to get in
Yeah.
trouble or what?
Uh, yes and no.
Uh-oh.
Yes and no. Yeah, I know. Yes and no. I don't know, man. It's a pretty weird story. It's a very very interesting story because um very interesting because coming looking at it now from what I know is I pretty much grew up in a cult.
What? Uh-oh.
It
No
wasn't like
way.
Mormonism
Oh
or
my
anything.
gosh, hold
It
on.
was more of a
Hold on. Your signal went out right when you said I pretty much grew up in a cult.
oh,
That was a really
okay.
bad
So
time for the signal to go out.
yeah, I think they're coming on to us right now. They're trying to cut transmission. So I pretty much grew up like in a cult. Looking back at it now, um, it was as far as like from 1 to 10. I was talking this with my buddy the other day, and on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being like the Jim Jones, everybody drinks the Kool-Aid,
Right.
and 5 and 8 being like Mormons. No, I would say like yeah, 8 being Mormons. I think we're a 7 for sure, a 7.
Really? That's
Yeah,
pretty high on the cult scale.
yeah. It was. It was pretty high, man, and I didn't realize it at the time, and because of that, man, I went through so many things, like, because it was the church that I grew up in was um, it's a Christian church, but it's allegedly non-denominational, right? But
Sure.
it's Pentecostal, evangelical, Word of Faith, prosperity gospel type of church.
Sure.
So
Okay.
it, yes, so it's like and it's also a Hispanic church, like a lot of Hispanic people, because it's a Spanish speaking church. So I grew up in a Spanish speaking church,
Okay.
and since it is Hispanic culture, very superstitious, incredibly superstitious. Like like everybody's always crossing themselves. You got to wear like red bands around your arm, around your hands, so you won't get the evil eye. You do the whole
What?
crossing your eyes, hitting down. Yeah. Like Hispanic culture is very superstitious.
And
I
this
don't.
was all going on like in your church.
Yeah. Well, because of superstition, you know how it goes, man. Whenever you don't have a solid foundation on the Bible, you do a lot of eisegesis, and you try to build the doctrine around. You make it work within the Bible, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of, and since it is a word of faith movement, I'm sure you're familiar with the word of faith movement, and
Yeah,
also,
and to be clear, the Word of Faith movement, and I only speak to this because I've had experience with stuff that people have called Word of Faith movement that it doesn't classically qualify, but then I've definitely, I mean, Word of Faith, there is like a solid Word of Faith. I would say there's even a spectrum of Word of Faith.
yeah.
But
Well,
but I, but
this
I
is
get what you
this is a
mean.
solid.
It
This is solid.
sounds like this church was a little bit on the
Yeah.
they probably land around where they land on the cult scale too.
Yeah, yeah, no, it does, and it's like a very name it and claim it, very
Uh-huh.
name it and claim it. But all of this though, I didn't know. So growing up in this environment, that's how it was. It was a very high energy, high strung, gotta live the good life, wealth and health, victorious lifestyle that of course they would say, of course the Bible talks about that, right? And
Right.
so and that's what was pushed upon us. That's what was pushed upon
So
the
there's
people.
probably a lot of pressure on giving big tithes, and the bigger tithe you
Of
get, the
course.
cooler Lamborghini you get, that kind of stuff.
Mm, yeah, well, it's because I don't know, man. Like honestly, like I could talk to you for hours and hours about this, but I don't want to, bore the people,
No,
bore your
no. I mean,
people.
it's interesting. Part of what I found this podcast to be is a lot of people in these different Christian traditions, different sort of streams of Christianity. It's good to be able to hear from somebody kind of on that other side. We've had a few Catholic experiences here
Mhm.
in the
Yes,
past
sir.
couple episodes. In fact, there's one more coming out. He's got another take on that, and actually another episode that is not going to air has some of this Pentecostal type of stuff. So it's going to be interesting. So I'll tell you when to quit. I will use my podcaster superpowers to see when when this is enough. But I mean, this is fascinating. What people grow up in, the kind of churches they grow up in, really does sort of influence the way that they look at Christianity as a whole and how they are able to discern, kind of squirrely theology and things like that. So I'm fascinated with it. So tell me a little bit about this church, a little bit more about this church of yours.
Okay, well, so the way we grew up in that church, and I went from that church from the age of 11 all the way up till 30 years old. So I was 29 to 30, going on to 30, and that's how long I spent there, almost 20 years in that
And this
church.
was the big church.
And yeah, well, okay, this church was founded in Brazil, and in Brazil, it's spread out throughout the world. It's a Spanish-speaking church. Well, it was in Portuguese, now it's in Brazil. I mean, now it's in Spanish, and it's all over the world. They even have English churches now. So in Brazil, it grew out in the 70s. You know when the Jesus movement came about in the 70s?
Yeah.
Well, right around that same time in the 70s, that church blew up. And so it spread all over the world. And so it came here into the States. And here in the States, the church that I would go to, it would have about 200 people to 300 people on average on a Sunday morning, right?
Yeah.
Well, we would always go to every Sunday evening to the mega church, the main church, which should hold 3,000 people, right?
Okay.
And combining now here in the States, up to date, they have probably like about 70 to 80 churches just here in California. And they're practically in almost all of the southern states of the United States. Total, they probably have about 500 churches here in the United States. Worldwide, they have about 5 to 10 million members.
Woo.
Probably more than that, man. They have a lot of people that join it. So that church here, where we started going, when we started going to that church, like God did all that stuff in my dad's life, everything like that. And growing up in that place, it was very it was a lot of highs and lows. You know what I'm talking about? It's kind of like, because the emphasis is not on a relationship with Jesus, what ends up happening is that you carry a burden, you carry weight upon your own shoulders to be a good person, to succeed in life. Because their theology, which they do teach about salvation, that salvation is through Jesus Christ, that he died for you, that Jesus loves you, that he rose again from the dead, right? Have like the basics down, which now I understand that, hey, that's how my dad's life changed, right? Because he did use his faith, and Jesus had so much grace and love for him that he changed his life because my dad wanted to. Now everything else besides that has been his own has been his own hand, has been his own strength and willingness to come and succeed. So that's how I grew up. I grew up in learning, hey, you're saved, but grace, and this is something they would say, like grace, God doesn't deal with grace. It's all about what you can do for him, because the more you can do for him, the more he does for you. And so with that type of mentality growing up, you're always striving to do things. You're always striving to give more tithing. You're always striving to give bigger offerings. You're always striving to do things that they would have every 6 months. They have these special, they call them campaigns, where you would, some people would even give like all their money, all their bank account. They would just dump it into an envelope or dump it into an envelope and give it, because God promises in the Bible, they use all these weird Bible verses to say, hey, just like Abraham, here's an example, like Abraham was faithful to God, God didn't take his son, and God promised that he would give him a big descendants. Well, just like Abraham sacrificed, you also can sacrifice your money, and you sacrifice your money to God, and God's going to give you 10, 20, 30, 40 fold, or whatever you want. You got your kid in drugs, don't worry, give money to God, and God will see that you really want this, and so God will deliver your son from drugs. Hey, you want a happy marriage? Give all your money, and God will give you a happy marriage, and so on and so forth. And so that would happen every 6 months.
Right.
And yeah, so I don't know if you can kind of get the feel of how this faith-based
Now,
work.
here's the question.
Yeah.
Here's the question. Are you ready for the question?
I kind of know what the question is, but go.
Did it work?
Of of course. Yes.
It did?
Sometimes it did and sometimes it didn't. See, that's the whole thing. See, and that's what messed that right there, your question is the question that messed me up in my head as to not question it because I would see that things would work. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
well, I mean, that's what I mean is like, because there, a church. See, here's the thing. I'm not trying to defend any church that is trying to be sketchy, and certainly not superstition. I'm big against superstition, that's not to say anything about the culture from which that stems from that you mentioned. But you know, see, it's for me personally, it's a balance with this whole tithing and expecting a bunch of money back from God type thing. Because, see, that's the thing, too. I mean, obviously, on the surface, everything that you've said sounds like really messed up, like really squirrely.
yeah.
But, every so often you hear somebody who, like, gives a testimony or stands up before tithing time and says, like, yo, I gave my last $100 bill, I emptied out my account, and then this week whatever, my landlord gave me $3,000 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's, and again, like I even had an experience once where I was at a big conference. I was actually working the conference, and they kind of did a tithe deal, and they said, hey, here you go, here's your chance, like do whatever you can, whatever you feel led to. I didn't even have money. I had zero money in my bank account, and I was working this job to get money. All I had to my name was a Subway, and I kid you not, this is a hilarious thing. I think it's hilarious, but it's totally true. I had a Subway, like, card, or maybe it wasn't a Subway, some Subway sandwich, like, punch card.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, like, the only thing of monetary value I had. And I was like, well, that's all I got. So I put it in the tithe bag as it went by. And then it was like literally a day later, there was a couple $100 in my account, and I checked it with my bank, and it had this weird error that said like sender unknown, or like sender unknown entity or something like that. And that I was always tripping out like, oh, whoa, like what is this stuff? But then there's other times I give a bunch of tithes, which I faithfully do. I believe in tithes. And just life goes on.
Yeah. And see, this is something that I had to reconcile with after I left because, I left.
Yeah,
that.
Sure.
That's something that I had to reconcile with because I believe there are truths in the Bible.
Yeah.
There are laws, like up and down and all these different, I guess you would say scientific laws, reality laws within our reality.
Yeah.
And I believe that there are truths and within the Bible that are set forth by God from the beginning of time. Something as simple as you give and you receive. You plant, you sow and you reap.
Yeah,
and
kind
so
of the generous cycle.
Yeah,
of
so
God's
these are
universe.
exactly. So these are truths, man. And when you give with all your heart, you're gonna receive. Just like that widow did with Elijah. She gave all the oil that she had. God abundant her, gave her more. That widow that gave to Jesus, she gave the most, right? Everybody was giving a lot. She gave what? She gave like a penny, and then, she gave the most. Why? Because I believe God. Now I know that God looks at her heart.
Right.
He sees what we have. He sees the intentions. And so, for example, you give with the intention to receive something, but without the intention to say, hey, Lord, here it is. Do what you will. If you give me, awesome. If you don't, hey, I'm not going to go out there and, blaspheme your name. We're good,
Yeah.
And I believe that that's what God sees. And all these, and the miracles that I would see at that church were from people that, in my opinion, did that. The people that gave with all of their heart and honestly and truly. And so what happens? This law of giving and receiving takes effect within their lives. And so then they receive that. They receive it. Why? Because they gave with all their heart. But now, to create a theology that every time you give, you will receive, that is where you are inserting your own predetermined theology. That's where the malice comes in, you know? That's where
Yeah.
the real malice comes in, the shadiness comes in and said, hey, every time you give, if you're faithful 100% on your tithing, how can God not give back to you? It's impossible. Or is God a liar? And you're like, oh man, God's not a liar. How can he lie? And then
Right.
you give, and you don't see God giving back, and you're like, man, screw this, dude. Get this, man. And so that's why that church has like a higher turnover rate than McDonald's. Like people are in and out, boom, 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 boom. Why? Because people get something, they roll out. People don't get something, and they roll out the same way. Because the relationship with Jesus is not the thing that is the emphasis. It's all about,
Right.
even the church slogan is to stop suffering, you know, and your dreams will come true, pretty much. You know, hey, you got
Yeah,
a
I mean
problem.
that's a pretty good tagline.
Oh, for sure. I mean, can you imagine? Like, hey, you suffering, buddy? Like, yeah, I got some suffering. Well, come on down.
Joyspiracy, take a listen, and life is perfect.
Exactly. Health, wealth. Come on, who doesn't want that? We all want that. So
Did
that's
you did you ever see anybody or know anybody or like hear of a family or something that like emptied out their bank account, gave everything they had, and then what like became homeless because of it?
I don't know if homeless, but I do know of people who gave everything and then tried to sue the institution because they gave everything and now they were penniless. I knew,
Whoa.
yeah, I knew a lot of people. I mean, it would get to the point where they would have like these special services and people, they would say, "Oh, the Spirit of God is telling me." It's a classic line, you know. The Spirit of God is telling me here that there's three people with $100 that want to give, and and, and God's not gonna be praised until these three people come forward,
Oh
and
my
then
gosh.
and then and then they'd wait, and then cricket, cricket. Come on, I know you're out there. God's calling you. You feel that burning in your heart, and then somebody would stand up, like, all right, praise Jesus, praise Jesus. We got the first person. I'm not gonna leave here until three people come up with $100 to glorify God.
Whoa, that is hardcore.
That dude, you have to be really, you have to really have your pants way up tight in order to do that kind of stuff. And I
Yeah,
saw that numerous times. It never failed because I think, like the social pressure in between people, like, oh man, it's kind of awkward. I'm just gonna go just so awkwardness can end.
I'll pay $100 for this to stop.
Yeah, like, ugh, this is awkward. I can feel it crawling my skin. I need it to stop.
Wow, that's yeah, okay. All right. So yeah, I think you rated it correctly on the scale. Now, as far as so you said they kind of had the basic gospel down, right? Now, let's see. So you went there between 11 and 30.
Hmm.
That's 19 years. So did your parents keep going there? Were your parents there the whole time, or are they
Yeah,
still
yeah.
there,
Oh,
or what?
yeah. My dad, and my sisters, they're ushers. They're totally involved. I wasn't totally involved too. I mean, I was the youth minister. I was in charge of so many things, Like, that was my deal, man. I grew up in church throughout my whole formative years, and that was me. Like, that was my identity. My identity was based on who I was within those circles. So,
Right.
so yeah, they're still involved. Yeah, they're all still there. They're highly, highly involved. My parents, both of them, highly involved. My sister's highly involved. So.
Oh, so everybody's still there. Now, have your parents or your sister or anybody ever reported kind of a financial miracle as they're called?
Oh yeah, yeah. Even I have. Even I
Yeah.
have. Yeah, I've given. I've had similar stories to yours, like that. Like, oh, this is all I got, Jesus. and uh, and I saw stuff happen, and that's why I came down to that conclusion about giving and receiving. It's just something that's there, It
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's really tough cuz I got to be honest, when people start like bashing on word of faith type stuff and here, again, I'm not here to defend the institutions who are truly guilty of something bad, which it sounds like the one you're describing was uh cuz I've experienced things like that, and I think maybe part of it is I haven't been in a situation where that has been abused, I think. And
That's
so,
that's the correct word. See right there, that word that you use,
yeah.
abuse. is a word that you can generously place it over the way that is taught. It's abusive.
Yeah.
So you're taking God's generosity and you're abusing them. You're abusing that which is natural, which is something that should be wholehearted, and you're taking it to the next level, and you're literally grabbing God, by the cuffs and throwing up against the wall and say, "You better bless me now."
Right. Yep. No, it's not good. It's not. It's not good at all.
Yeah, because then who's God?
Yeah. And okay, so I got a couple of questions here, and I don't know which order to ask them, so I'm going to ask it all at once and let you just respond how your heart desires. So, A, you switched churches. I want to know why you switched churches. What made you switch churches? Was there something that kind of broke the camel's back? And then I'm interested in something you mentioned, which is like, you basically rooted your entire identity in that church. And I feel like a lot of Christians I've seen across the country, it's almost like their identity is more rooted in just the individual church they're in more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And for somebody whose identity is planted in one church, it takes a lot to move churches. And then you're almost faced with maybe a potential identity crisis.
Yeah, man. It's it's nothing on me. It's nothing that I did. I'm a firm believer that it was the Holy Spirit. Well, growing up like that, man, as you can see, the view you have of who God is, His personhood, is completely distorted. Growing up like that, you think God is one way. Growing up, I thought God was a God who would only give me something if I gave something to Him. That the more I worked, the more I went out to do street witnessing, the more I went out to be there at church early in the morning, late at night, the more I cleaned, the more I scrubbed toilets, the more I talked to people about Jesus. The more I did that, the more holy I was, because that was the culture. That is the culture currently within that place. That the more you do, the more God is with you. The less you do, the less God is with you. And yeah, so that's the type of environment. And plus, it's a cultish environment. So what I mean by cult is that there are three things that define a cult. It's the isolation. So try to isolate you, from your family members. They try to isolate you from your friends. And they use various ways to do that, but isolation is a big one. And that place definitely does that. They say, well, hey, you can't be hanging around with other Christians because they're of a different faith. They're of a different wine. The wine that they drink is different than our wine. The faith that they follow is different than our faith. God placed us upon this faith. So that already right there. And you can't, and so they separate you from other Christians. They separate you even from your family members. Oh, well, your family members, only talk to them about Jesus, but how can you go out and hang out with them while they're drinking and while they're at a party? You can't be at a party. Come on, So they isolate you from that. They keep you at church all the time. Like, hey, you got to come, do street witnessing. You got to come and you got to be, because this church is open 7 days a week, Sunday through Sunday. There's a service every single day. Every day.
It's kind of like the busy work. They keep you busy. No. They keep you involved, so you don't have time for anything else.
Yeah, you don't have time, and that goes back to your question of identity. You become part of that culture. So they isolate you. The second one is they stop you from gathering information. So outside information is a no-no. It's taboo. It's only the Bible and within their context to read it, and only the books that are dispensed by the church leaders. So you can read all the books that are dispensed by the church leaders, but it's like an echo chamber, So you're reading all the information that they want you to read in order, being based on the Bible, but they're doing a lot of eisegesis within the Bible. So it's all circle. It's a big circle of information. They're pretty much reconfirming. So you're like, oh yeah, that is true. Oh yeah, that the Bible does say that. But of course, it doesn't really say that, but the way you think about it is because that's what you're taught.
Yeah, and they put it in context for you.
Oh, yeah, they
in
tell
their
you.
Context.
Exactly. They say this is how you're supposed to read it. And so they They do that information. Then the third one is dependency. They create a dependency upon the system. So by creating a dependency, they say, hey, your life, your well-being is pretty much dependent upon you doing things. So remember what I said before. So if you don't do things, guess what? God's not going to be with you. And hey, man, we all want God to be with us. We all want God to be with us. So the more I do, the more God is with me. So that creates a dependency of having to be there, having to say no to your family members, having to say no to outside sources of information. So those are the three things that keep you unconsciously within that cult, and that's the way that this place worked. And they use those three main things, and a lot of other cults base, it varies on how they do those three things, but
Sure.
That's
Yeah,
how
no, I mean, I've seen the Scientology documentaries, like for sure. The way you're describing it, that's exactly what they describe in programs like that. Wow, that's intense. So tell me about leaving that church.
That took a long time, man. That took a long time. I was there, so I got married in that church too. I got married when I was like 21, I think 21. Yeah, 23. My wife was 21. At that time, I left for 7 years out of that church, but I was still going to church, but in another state because I joined the military. So I left when I was like 19, and I left when I was 19 after 9/11 because hoorah.
Yeah, no,
America.
you went for it, huh?
Yeah, yeah, dude, totally bought into that. Totally bought into that. America. Let's go get Osama, man. Come on. Brought down those towers,
Yeehaw!
dude. Yeah, dude, brought down those towers. We got to go get it done. So I joined, but since I was a Christian, I didn't want to kill anybody. I was like, I'm gonna go be a paramedic. So I became a corpsman and joined the Navy, and it's because I can't kill anybody.
Sure. You got standards.
Yeah, I got morals. I got
Yeah.
something to upkeep. So, so I joined, and then I left for like 7 years. But my wife, she also grew up in that same system of church, right? So we moved to Virginia, and we were living in Virginia and in San Diego, and in both of those, in San Diego, there's churches there. So I would go to the same church, and in Virginia, I'd go to the same church. So I was always around it.
Yeah, so it was all this. You just went to different branches or whatever of the church.
No, it's the same church. It's the same church,
Just
but
different locations.
Different locations. Because this is how it is. Anywhere you go of that church, it's the same thing every single service. So any day you go, they'll preach you the same thing because it's all topical. It's not a verse by verse. It's all topical. It's all topical sermons. So if you go to a Sunday morning church here in San Diego, it'll be the same morning. It'll be the same service in San Francisco.
Oh, they kind of got it built into the corporate structure. Like they send out a newsletter at the beginning of the month that tells each church what they're teaching on.
Yeah, each pastor, they have like these campaigns, kind of like this, our summer series is going to be this and this and that, it's the same kind of deal, so
that's pretty shady, man.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, when you're in it though, the excuse is like, hey, the Holy Spirit wants the whole body to know this, so we have to teach everybody the same thing.
Right.
There's always an answer for every question.
Okay, so you left, but you didn't really leave. You were
no, yeah, I was still part of it, and so I was still part in it. Came back to SoCal, lived here so I came back when I was like 27. Yeah, I think I was 27, something like that. And then right around the age of 28, 29, that's when it really started to hit me. Because I came back to my old church, and I started going back, became an usher again, started doing the whole shebang, started, as if I never left, just put the old shoes back on, my old identity back on. And but it was different though, because my relationship with God has always been an up and down because of the having to be doing things,
Yeah, you got to work for it, man.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't, there's no such thing as a free lunch.
Right.
So since I always had to work for my lunch, there's been times where, you just can't go to church as often. We call them seasons now. So, you go through seasons where where you just can't do stuff like you used to, right?
Right.
And that hit me hard, and I couldn't do things. I couldn't do a lot of things, and I always felt bad, man. I always felt like up and down, like my life was on. I always think back to like my spiritual life was like on a wave. It would go up. I'd have peaks, and I was on top of a mountain, like Jesus. He's like right next to me. We're like shoulder to shoulder right now. We're doing this.
And that's when you were spending 8 hours a day scrubbing church toilets
Oh
and
yeah,
reorganizing the church library.
yeah, and then I'd be there on a Monday night for the prosperity service. I'd be there on a Tuesday night for the healing service, Wednesday night for the quote unquote Bible study. I'd be there on a Friday night for the deliverance services, and then I'd be there all day Saturday to do witnessing, to do whatever needed to be done for Sunday. And then I'd be there all Sunday, with the youth and all that. So when I was
Yeah.
on that train, I was high. I was like on a spiritual high, right? I was like,
Yeah.
dude, I'm like, like where's Satan right now? Because I'll cast him out right now.
I'll take them on. Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's interesting, and hold your thought, because I like where this is going. But it's so interesting that there's like a duality going on where, your spiritual health was based on doing these things, but these things are like, I mean, technically good things that
yeah,
somebody who
yeah,
had a good, spiritual grounding and was close to Jesus, that type of person would be doing these things.
yeah,
But they
exactly.
would be doing it in opposite order.
Yeah,
But now you have to do it in order to, get the love and blessing from Christ,
yeah,
whereas,
yeah,
it
and
should be
and
where Christ compels us to do that because of his blessing.
yeah, and in all fairness, it's a 50-50. Sometimes you do it, and I mean, most of the times I would do it unconsciously. I would do it like because I love Jesus, right?
Yeah.
But you're doing it unconsciously too because you have to.
Yeah.
You're compelled to.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So
It's almost like it's happening both at the same
yes,
time, but
yes,
it's
I would
so
say that
easy to cross over.
exactly. There's that very fine line, and I'd always find myself hopping back and forth. Like, oh, now I'm here, now I'm here, now I'm here, now I'm here, and that's how it was. And it got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. Where I just and it happens to so many people in that place. Not many people last years in there. I mean, like I said, they have such a high turnover rate. I mean, people there are just 5 years max, 6 years max because so much pressure. And but we were there for like I was there for like 18, almost 20 years, and so it got to a point where I just couldn't anymore. And I was starting to make excuses. I got a new job driving late at night. And I was starting to make excuses. I was starting to say, hey, you know what? I can't make it Sunday morning. I started can't do this, can't do that. Oh, my job is getting in the way. But in all reality, deep down inside of me, I was just like, man, what's going on? Like, why can't I feel? Because I was being honest, man. I was like doing those things, and I wanted Jesus more than anything. I wanted Jesus in my life. I wanted that relationship with Christ so badly, but I just wasn't getting it the way I felt, not so much felt, but the way I knew
Yeah,
that it should be.
the way you were taught.
Yeah,
You,
like the way I knew it should be, because there was this way that I felt deep inside me, because I would read the Bible, and I'd be like, man, like why can't I be like this? Like why can't I have this relationship? Why can't I be like these dudes that are in here in the Bible? Why am I such a wishy-washy floaty? And it
right.
wasn't like a wishy-washy of like, one day I'd get all drunk and be like, ah, no. It was more of like, stop doing things, because I never really went out into the world. I just always, was just stop doing stuff.
Right.
And
Right.
so it got to that point, man. It got to that point where I think it was God Himself. Looking back, He was putting that pressure on me, just putting that pressure to really seek Him. And I stopped dressing. I stopped being an usher. Never will. Didn't stop being an usher, but just stopped putting, because you also have to wear a uniform if you're an usher there at that church. And so I just stopped wearing a uniform. Stopped going Sunday mornings. I stopped doing a lot of things that I started doing, and I just started really just separating myself as slowly but surely, and then one day, since I had that job late at night, I started listening to Coast to Coast.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
oh.
I started listening to Coast to Coast, and one time there was this guy who was saying, "The Nephilim are here in the book of the supernatural, the ultimate chess game." And I was like, "What? What's the guy talking about? What do you mean the book of the supernatural?" He's like, "Down in Machu Picchu, the Nephilim are red-headed giants." And I was like, "Nephilim? What? Genesis 6?" And I was like, "What is this guy talking about?" And then, George Norton's like, "All right, well, thank you very much, Ellie Marzulli, for being on the show." I'm like, "Ellie
Oh, that's
Marzulli?"
so funny.
Yeah. And I was like, "Ellie Marzulli, Coast to Coast." And I as soon as I got home, when I got home, opened up the old laptop and started Googling Nephilim, Ellie Marzulli. And I started looking. I was like, "What is this, man? What is this?" And so I started looking into a little bit, and he started talking about the giants and the Nephilim, and the women descended, and the Watchers descended, and that was a trip. And I was like, "Well, this is crazy." And I left it alone.
Yeah.
I looked it up.
As you pretty much have to do.
Yeah, and I left it alone. I'm like, "No, this guy's nuts. This guy's crazy." Why? Because all of my background, all of my undue influence, my mind control said, "Stop what you're doing. This is wrong."
Wow.
All those years of being,
your conditioning was catching up to you, man.
Yeah, all that conditioning said, "Stop. Wrong. You can't be looking into other people's stuff. You can't
keeping
be
you from the truth, bro."
Yeah. So I stopped, and I just kept feeling bad, and then it all came back around when I was 29, and then right around the age of 29 and a half, that's when I really something else came up again. Something else came up again with Ellie Marzulli, and on Coast to Coast again. I was like, "All right."
It's so funny. I'm sorry. It's so funny you're mentioning him right now. We were just talking to him the other day, so it's weird to remember that these guys are like they're everywhere. They're big time.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so I started looking into it, and then you know how that whole rabbit hole goes. I started going down it, man. I started going down it, and then I started like Nephilim, and then I remember on my podcast, and then after that, but at that time I got a different job. So between that half of year of difference, I got a different job. I started working for another company that I currently work for now, and that was at the age of 30 exactly, because I've been there almost 3 years. So I started working for this company, and because of the nature of my job, I can put on a headphone right on one of my ears.
Yeah.
And so while I work, and since I'm not directly supervised, I can, I can do my job and listen to things at the same time. So I started listening to music, and then after a while I got bored, right? And then that's when I said, "Hey, you know what? What about that Nephilim stuff?" And in the back of my head, like, "Don't do it." Like, "No, what about it? Don't do it." You know what? And so on the podcast player, I typed in Nephilim, right? On the podcast player, I typed in Nephilim, and Canary Cry Radio popped up.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah. Canary Cry Radio popped up, and I was like, Nephilim. And then it was, it started off, I think you guys were talking to Rob Skiba.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It was like really early. You guys only probably had like 50 episodes, if that, probably like 30 episodes.
Yeah, no, Rob Skiba was early, man.
Yeah. Rob Skiba's like, Rob Skiba, huh? Clicked on it, dude, done. Doug Hamp, done. In one day, I like knocked out like probably like 8 episodes. I was done.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So I listened to you guys, and I was like, man, this is crazy stuff. So, but I was still going a little bit to that other church, right? I was still going.
By the way, real quick, I because sometimes I get listeners to this show who haven't heard Canary Cry Radio. He's talking about Canary Cry Radio, which is another show I do with my partner Gauntz. Check it out.
Come on, people.
You
have not been on the Canary Cry train, you got to jump on it. There's plenty to binge right now.
I'm happy to bring new listeners into the fold from this because almost exclusively this podcast is inhabited by Canary Cry listeners, but once in a while we'll get somebody wandering in.
That's cool.
So, hey, strangers.
Yeah, what's up, guys? So I started listening to that, and at that time I was still going to the other church, and there was a lot of reckoning that I had to do, because after listening to Rob Skiba, I just went down the Skiba hole and the Doug Camp hole. Just dude, hardcore, man. Like I just started like every single day, because you imagine every single day for 8 hours, right? Every single day for 8 hours, I started listening to you guys.
Dang, dove in deep.
Yeah, so because I mean my shift is usually 8 hours, and sometimes I do overtime, so like 10 hours.
Sure.
So 8 hours of just listening to stuff, podcasts, all day.
Just breaking that mind control, man.
5 days a week. That's what it took, dude. That's what it took.
Wow.
5 days a week of 8 hours every day of just hitting all these incredibly weird fringe topics, from the Nephilim to Illuminati to satanic rituals, the whole gamut, man. Everything. Sasquatch, Chupacabra, the whole gamut, man. Just ran the whole thing. And I started running through it, and everything that, because I don't know if you remember when I told you in the beginning that I used to read a lot.
Yeah.
Well, that stopped right away. That stopped. Like my dad was like, "No, you can't read anymore. You can't do that anymore."
Because of the church?
Yeah, because of the church.
Oh,
so
whoa.
So I stopped reading books, dude. I stopped reading Christian themed theology books right away. I only read them for like a year, and after that it was done. Skis done, no more. So I didn't read anything else besides quote unquote the Bible and the other books from the church leaders. Dude, those books I like ravaged through them. I had all of them. Like my library was just pretty much propaganda from my old church. I had like 40 to 45 books of just the whole gamut of just the propaganda from that church, and I consumed them all because I was an avid reader. But now that I started, when I started listening to you guys, I started kind of like, all right, man, I gotta read more books. So I just started like, got on that Amazon Prime and just boom.
You started thinking outside the cage, bro.
Yeah. Classic. Indeed, I did. I started thinking outside of that cage. That was my mind. And but I was still going to that other church, and I had questions. I had a lot of questions, and I started listening to because you guys had Dr. Future on there, and I started listening to Future Quake, and I listened to all of the 300 episodes of Future Quake, and that's what was my life for one full year, from the age of 30 to 31. I just did podcasts every single day.
Oh, dude.
8 hours.
You ravaged it. You ravaged like the whole industry in 1
year.
Did.
Yeah, I was solely responsible for pretty much downloads all across the whole fringe radio network, Revelations. Chris White knocked him out right away. Yeah. Chris White, Future Quake, all the old guests you guys had, I went through all their podcasts. I went through all their stuff.
Wow.
And so I went through all that stuff, and it took me a year. And in that year, I had a lot of questions, and I was asking around, subtly. I'd ask my dad, "Hey, so what's up with the Nephilim?" He's like, "What do you mean the Nephilim?" He's like, "Yeah, what about the Nephilim?" I told him. He's like, "Oh, well, they're the sons of Seth." I'm like, "You sure?" Because, and then I told him, and he's like, no, that's not true. And I was like, "Yeah, man." And then he'd come back a day later. "You know what? That's probably true. They probably did mate with women." I'm like, "Yeah, man." And so things like that, and then I'd ask and then I have my other, my friend, his name's Chuck. He's the one that does the podcast with me now. I started dropping truth on him because he's like pretty much like, he's pretty much like my best friend, him and my other friend that we have, that pretty much, the trio that we grew up together.
Yeah.
So I started dropping truth on him because he was kind of going through the same thing as I was. And I was telling him, "Yo, bro, do you know about the Nephilim?" He's like, "What about the Nephilim?" And so I dropped the truth on him. He's like, "No way, dude, really?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I don't know, man. That sounds kind of heretical." I'm like, "I don't know. Just telling you." And then so we'd have discussions with him, me and him, back and forth, because me and him work at the same company. And so we'd always talk to each other and, have lunch with each other and just discuss these things, right, outside of church.
Just
And
talk about the Nephilim in a safe space
yeah,
outside of church.
outside of church, yeah, we talk about church things outside of church because in church we couldn't talk about church things.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Gosh, this is
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So within that church, so then we were talking and then back and forth and we were blowing each other's minds. I'm like, and he'd be like, hey, have you heard of the guy this guy called Chris Pinto? I'm like, no, who's Chris Pinto? And he's like, and then I tell him, dude, do you know America wasn't founded by Christian? He's like, no, you're lying. I'm like, no, it wasn't. It was founded by the Illuminati. He's like, Illuminati, no, the Masons are like Rosicrucians. Oh my God. What is real, man? What is real? And then the big one, I'm like, you seen Loose Change? He's like, what's Loose Change? Because I don't got it in my pocket. I'm like, no, dude, it's a documentary. 9/11 was an inside job. And he's like, I knew it. I knew it. So that's how it was, man, for a whole year, dude. It was just back and forth of like, who am I? What am I? What's my identity? What's going on here, you know?
Dude, and 1 year, I mean, that's pretty fast, actually. Like, that's
Yeah.
not, like, that's a pretty sudden change. Like, that was a jailbreak, is
Yeah,
what
so
you guys had. That was a straight up jailbreak.
yeah, so then after that whole year from 30 to 31, right around 31, I fell into a deep, deep state of depression.
Yep.
Like deep, dude. Like I remember one time I was laying down on my bed at home and my wife comes in. I was sobbing, dude. I was like sobbing, like literally sobbing like a man child.
Wow.
She's like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. Like I told her, I remember the words I said, have you ever felt like the life that you're living wasn't meant to be lived? Like you were living in somebody else's life. And I remember, I mean, God bless my wife, man. She's awesome. She just, she's pretty much just like a mother holds her baby in her hands.
Oh, that's adorable,
This
man.
giant beast of a man with a beard, snot running down my luscious beard, like, it's okay, child, it's okay. And I'm like, I don't know what's real anymore, wife. And
Wife.
yeah. And I was like, and I was just depressed, man. I heard a very good, a very good way of explaining this one time. It said, imagine you've been married to a woman for 40 years, or a man, for 40 years. And one day she comes up or he comes up to you and tells you, hey, remember the last 40 years? Well, I've been with another man, with another woman. I have another family, and we're done. So up until that moment, everything that is real, that is reality, goes away. So you neither have past and you neither have future, and you're in a state of chaos all at once.
Ooh.
And so that is who you are in that moment, because you neither existed for the last 40 years and you neither will exist for however long. It's just you in that moment.
Yeah, everything was a lie and you don't know what lies ahead, man.
Exactly. So that's what I was.
That's heavy.
God,
that is heavy. That has got to be, I mean, honestly, that is like the greatest story of transformation that I've heard. And I've heard a lot of people's stories, and there are a lot of great ones. But, I mean, you straight up had, like, the moment, like the moment of, like, absolution where you realized that, it's just complete change.
Yeah.
Complete change in worldview.
Yeah, so I was depressed, man. I was like really depressed, and I was like, what's going on here? What is real, And right around that time, I started because I'd always, like, on my car, I'd also listen to low key throughout the whole years while I was going to that church. As a Christian, you're always hungry. You always want the word, and when you're not being fed, you're gonna look for it, man.
Right.
You're gonna look for it.
Yeah.
So low key, I'd always listen to K-Wave, and K-Wave is Calvary Chapel Radio out here in Southern California.
Yeah.
And so low key, I'd always listen to it. Nobody would know.
You're such a bad boy, man.
Spirit.
Such a bad rebel.
Me and the whole just yeah. Having to go to another church to get fed, bro. That's the state we're in right now. So low key, I'd always listen to K-Wave, and I remember But at that time, when I was feeling really bad, I was like, you know what? This is the Holy Spirit telling me, man, you gotta listen to the Word. You gotta get into the Bible because, yeah, you're learning all these truths, but, have you really gone through the Bible? Because that's what's important, right? And I on because I would listen to that at 2 o'clock. No, at 2 o'clock from I think from 2 to 3. Oh no, sorry, at 4 from 4 to 5 in the morning they have the verse by verse with Pastor Chuck in the morning, and I was like, I wonder if it's a podcast, right? And so I
Right.
go back to my iTunes and I click on and I type in Chuck Smith, right? And they have the whole Bible series, Old Testament and New Testament, from Chuck Smith when it was first recorded from 1978 to 1984. He went through the
Whoa.
whole Bible in Costa Mesa, from Genesis to Revelation. From Genesis to Revelation, he went through the whole Bible, verse by verse.
In 5 years.
Yeah, in 5 years.
Wow.
Every Sunday night at 7 p.m. in Costa Mesa, they had it from 78 to 84.
Wow, that's hardcore.
Yeah, and somebody uploaded all of that audio. They had to go from cassette to a CD, or probably like some other weird digital media, to a CD, to digital, to a podcast. Somebody went through all that trouble, man, to
Wow.
upload it.
That's like a treasure, man. That's like I know some older guys who are like super into the Grateful Dead, and I
Yeah.
guess a big thing with the Grateful Dead was people just recorded it on tape players, and then they would trade around these tapes like in the parking lots of concerts,
Yeah.
and then somebody has been going through and uploading every single concert up to like this database, and they basically did the same thing with all this Chuck Smith stuff. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
That's
That's
exactly
some,
what they did.
that's some true like 70s like dad stuff. Somebody's on it.
Yeah, somebody is on it, man. Whoever it is, I mean, he deserves a steak dinner, honestly. He's a godsend. So I looked it up and I was like, all right, Genesis 1. Boom. In the beginning, Pastor Chuck's like, well, good evening, everybody. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. God, Jesus is wonderful. And then this whole other world opened up, man. And so I went through the whole Bible with him. Boom, from beginning to end. I stopped listening to a lot of conspiracy podcasts, and I would still get my fix, here and there.
Yeah.
But it was mostly just straight word. Just
Yeah,
boom.
and when you stopped listening, about 80% of the listener download numbers for all of the podcasts went down. I remember.
Yeah, well,
those days.
whenever you guys would come out with a new episode, I would, I'd be like, ooh, finally another one
You'd
came
stay
out.
caught
And
up.
I'd click on it, download it. Yeah, I'd stay caught up for sure. I'd stay caught up with everybody, but I wasn't averaging through them as much,
Right,
But
right.
whenever a new one would come up, boom, listen to it, knock it out, boom, go back to the verse by verse. And so I went through the whole verse by verse from age 31, 32 to, yeah, almost to 32 and a half. So all this happened from when I was like 29 and a half all the way up to 32.
Wow.
And so I went through the whole Bible with him, boom, knocked it out. And that completely changed my life, man. Completely, because I finally read the Bible, listened to the Bible from an exegetical point of view, from it is what it is. If I don't know what it is, I don't know. If God is silent on this matter, you know what? I'm gonna be silent too. Dude, that was amazing. That was like, whoa, really? And so that really changed me. I discovered what grace is. This elusive word, which was grace, that was a taboo. That was like almost saying the F word at my old church, became this word that became synonymous with Jesus and with love, and it completely and utterly destroyed my life in a positive way, which it said, grace and all of these burdens that you have. Like, what really hit me, I remember one time I was at my store, because I work in different stores or whatever, and in grocery stores, right? And I go from different place to place. And I remember one time I was working and doing my job, and it was when when Pastor Chuck was reading, and he said, come to me, all you who are heavy laden, and I will ease that burden. give it to me. Give me your burdens. And when he said that, he said, you know what? He said, Jesus wants you to give him all of your burdens. Jesus wants you to give him all that you have. And that's grace, because he loves you. You don't have to do anything, he said. You just have to exist, and Jesus loves you. You just have to accept him for who he is and for who you are. And you're going to mess up, he said. You're going to go through things. You're not going to be able to do as much, but he loves you, and that's called grace. I broke down. I was done. That was it. I got down on my knees right there, man. I started bawling like a little kid. I was done. I was like, that's grace right there. That I don't have to do anything because he did it all. He did it all for me. And when that hit me, that changed my life completely. That got me out of that depression that I was in, because I didn't know what was. Finally found my new identity. I finally found my identity, that Jesus is my new identity. Not a church, not an institution, not my family, not nobody. Jesus. That's who I am. Jesus. That's who I need to be.
Wow. Dang, man. That is seriously like transformational gnarliness. Jesus jumping in, wrecking shop, dude. That's crazy. That is, I mean, and it's a 3.5 year transformation, just breaking down those all that conditioning that you had. Just whew,
Yeah.
that's a journey and a half, man.
Yeah, it was. And then after that I was like, all right, well, cool. I've gone through the Bible. So now what? I can't trust churches. That's what I was saying to myself, I can't trust churches. I can't go to church because all churches are no bueno, because that was my conspiratorial mindset still going in, like, hey man, there's a lot of bad stuff out there. I can't trust it because churches are man and this and that. And
I don't think I would ever go back to church after something like that. Like that's
yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
that's
bro.
just a huge betrayal.
Yeah.
Like when you learn about it.
God healed me though. He helped me understand what grace is and how, and so a lot of reconciling. I mean, there's so much more details I can go into, man, but it's just, we'd be here forever, but so much more happened in between. A lot of instances where God just really did his work, in my life. And so I was like, man, what do I do? Because I totally stopped going to that church in between that year that I read the Bible verse by verse. I stopped going to that church. One day I remember I was inside a service, right?
Yeah.
And then by this time I was already listening to the Bible and through the verse by verse. And I remember the pastor, he was saying something, and it just so happened that I had listened to that already, right? And he was saying, and I was just like, I like, inside of me, I wanted to stand up and yell and say, you're lying, man. What are you doing?
Do you remember what it was about?
Yeah, he was talking about tithings.
Of course. Of course he was.
Classic. He was talking about offerings, like, hey, if you don't give to God, God's not going to give to you, because God only loves those who give. Amen. Everybody's like, amen. Yeah. And I was just like, in a complete sense of self-awareness, looking around me, and I was like, dude, what are you guys doing, man? What's going on here? Am I the only one who can see this? Because at that point, I was totally red-pilled. At that point, I already had, my eyes were like the scales came off, and I was already looking. I was just like, dude, what are you guys doing, And I was just so much anger inside of my heart, so much anger of what was going on. And in that moment, as soon as it was over, I stood up and I said, I am never stepping foot back in here again. And I just rolled out. I didn't say bye. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my wife. I didn't tell anybody. Well, my wife, she kind of knew my feelings because I can speak to her. I can talk to her very well. We've always had a very open relationship, and to where we can speak to each other of the things that are going on. So she knew where my heart was at.
Right.
But at that point, I was like, I'm done. And so I just rolled out. I left, and I never looked back, and I never walked back in there. And I remember the pastor wanted to talk to me. Before this, the pastor had wanted to talk to me, and so we spoke a little bit, and we were, he was telling me like, hey, what kind of questions do you have?
How did you get on his radar? Like, how did he
Oh well,
know to talk to you?
he started noticing that I wasn't going as much. He started noticing that I wasn't being there all the time, you know. So I think he started noticing, you know, because I was a big player, you know what I'm saying? Like I would be heavily involved, and he started noticing that I was like um going less and less, and he was like, oh man, what's wrong, you know? Are you tithing on time? You know, are you giving enough? Maybe that's why you're feeling depressed and sad. And stop questioning all these things because it's not good to question, you know? It's not good to do all these things, you know, just because the classic verse they like to use is that the letter kills. You know when Paul says that the letter kills, but the spirit edifies.
Yeah.
Well, they say the letter. Paul meant the law, of course. If you read the context, a few verses behind it says the law, right?
Right.
That the law was meant to kill, but the spirit was meant to edify. Well, they completely take out of context, cherry pick it, and say the letter, and by letter they mean the Bible. And said the Bible, if you read it too much, it'll kill your spirit, it'll quench your spirit. I'm like,
What?
that's just that. That's just one way, dude. That's just one way of cherry picking stuff. So, so he was telling me that, and by this time I already knew all the counter arguments to those things, right? And I was telling him, hey man, but no, check this out. I said, but no, check this out. This is what the Bible really means. No, I don't think so. Well, that's your way of interpreting. I'm like, no, it's not my way. It's the Bible's way. You
Bro,
know?
here's the thing. Here's the thing. When I, look, I've had a lot of experiences with a lot of different Christian groups, a lot of different churches, even leadership in a lot of different churches, and I really tend to have a lot of grace and a lot of empathy, and when something seems like it's coming across wrong or coming across, I really try to see it how they see it and kind of
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
use that to try to, kind of bridge some gaps. But it sounds like this guy was kind of just a straight up crook. Like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
and
I'm having a
yeah,
hard
yeah,
time.
that's how they are. I mean, the reason people leave that church because they call them crooks. That's the word they use. They call them
I'm
crooks.
really having a hard time, like, empathizing or
Yeah,
even trying to,
and you
like,
can't, but
find.
you also have you also have to understand that these guys are just as much as in the system as you are, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're just as
Okay. You
much as a
found it.
victim as you are,
You
and
found it.
that's where I had to. That's what I had to do in order to forgive, in order to pull things out of my heart, to really stop hating, you know. I
Yeah.
had to say, man, these guys, and it's all thanks to Mike D, you know, to really empathize and have that emotional intelligence. Say, hey, these guys are just as much as victims as you are, dude.
Yeah.
You really can't blame them for too much.
Yeah.
Some of them don't. It might be high leadership, you know, but as far as these guys know, I mean, what can you do, man?
I mean, like, that's the exact church culture that you see in a lot of movies and secular sort of interpretations of what church
Yeah,
is like, or I mean, that's it. Like, that's the
yeah,
bad one. That's
yeah,
the one that they put in all the movies and all the TV shows.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's willful ignorance, honestly.
Yeah.
So, so at that point, yeah, I rolled out, man. I left, and then I was a lone wolf Christian. I thought that was gonna be my path in life, you know, to be
Yeah.
alone, to be like, just howling at the moon and just, witnessing here and there, and like, hey, man, you got to go to church, bro, because Jesus loves you. And they're like, oh yeah, well, what church you go to? It doesn't matter, but you got to go to church. We're not talking about me. We're talking about you, because you need Jesus. So that's the point I came into. That's what I came into, and I couldn't reconcile with that. And this is not to like disparage a lot of guys or a lot of gals who are in the same position as I was in. It's kind of like, well, there's no churches out there that are good. There's no churches, but this is, from my point of view, from my perspective, from what the Holy Spirit really led me to.
Sure.
And so I was at that point where like, man, well, what do I do? Because you're lost pretty much. Like, all right, well, this is cool. I know all these things. I left my old church because it was much a bunch of hooey. So what do I do? I love Jesus, and what do I do? I listen to podcasts in a park at 9 o'clock in the morning on Sunday by myself. Like, what do I do? Like, what do I do, man? And so that's what I
Right.
was, like that's the predicament I found myself in. So like, what do I do now, man? And so I remember in an episode of Future Quake that that Dr. Fuchs, he'd always talk about that he goes to a Calvary Chapel, that he goes to church, that he goes to church.
Yeah, yeah,
I was
totally.
like,
And he
yeah,
he would be the one you expect to be the lone wolf.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember criticizing him for it too when he'd say that, yeah, me and brother Tom over here, we go to church and we serve and we do things like this because that's what the Lord wants to do. And I was like, come on, Dr. Fuchs, you're part of the system, bro. How can you talk about all these truths and still be in it? No,
Right,
you
right.
can't, man. It's impossible. But I emailed him and I said, hey, this is what, and I emailed him with an open heart and I said, this is my situation. How do you do it? How do you reconcile? Because there's no perfect church. Every church that you go to, there's going to be something wrong. Either you're pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib, no trib,
Yeah,
already
yeah,
trib. You
yeah.
know, they believe in the Illuminati, don't believe in Nephilim, Cephite, whatever. There's always going to be something because the more you research, the more you find out that there's a lot of people doing a lot of weird stuff.
Yep,
And
that's for
so,
sure.
how do you reconcile with that, man? That's a situation I find myself in. How do you reconcile? How do you deal with this? How do you deal with trying to go to a place where you know that what they're telling you sometimes might be off because they just haven't taken the time to investigate, right?
Yep.
Well, I emailed him and I said, hey, Doc Fuchs, my name's, so and so. I got the situation going on. How do you do it? Like, how do you? Because I was bumming. I was like, how do you do it? How do you go to a church? And he wrote me back honestly. He said, hey, the internet is for crazy stuff. Church is so you can be part of the body of Christ and work shoulder to shoulder with other like-minded Christians who want to see the kingdom of God and his works done on this earth. So you can work alongside and help the needy, help the homeless, help the poor, and lift people up just like you're going to be lifted up. And I was like, it's pretty straightforward.
Good answer.
Yeah. I was like, I wanted to rebuttal him, but I was like, I got nothing, man. Yeah. Like, all right, okay. And then I prayed. I'm like, all right, God, that was like, Lord, well, this guy's true. What's up? Where do I go? What do I do? And it's a pretty crazy story, but it started raining here in California, which it hardly ever does. And it started raining, and my windshield wipers on my truck were broken, so I had to stop at an AutoZone. And a couple of years ago, like 5 years ago, I had like a sticker from a Calvary chapel that this somebody gave me. I don't know. I just put it on my car, because it looked pretty cool.
Right.
So I put it on my truck, and this guy at the AutoZone, he's like, hey brother. I'm like, oh, what's going on, man? He's like, hey, right away. He's like, so which Calvary you go to? I'm like, no church. Like, oh, you a Christian? I'm like, yeah, I'm a Christian. So what church do you go to? I'm like, dang it. I don't go to church,
Dude,
dude.
busted. You got found out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like, I don't go to a church. And he's like, oh, why not, man? Hey, you know what though, bro? It's all good. You can come to my church if you want. And then immediately in my mind, like, didn't you just pray about this like last week?
Oh, yep. Yep.
And then I looked up and like, Jesus, why do you always do this? Why do you always gotta call
Why you
out my
gotta
prayers?
do me like this, man?
Yeah, why do you always gotta call out my prayers? And see, that's why you can't pray for things.
Hey, you get what you pray for, man.
Because stuff happens. Yeah,
Yep.
God's good. So he told me, invited me. He invited me to like this really big one, this Calvary Chapel, really huge down in Chino, like a couple thousand people, and I was like, ugh, this is way too big.
Right.
The message was nice, but I was like, it was way too many people. And
Yeah. Did it feel a little bit too much like your last church, or did you kind of have a smaller church in mind when you were looking for something?
I wasn't looking for anything.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking for anything. I was just going with the flow. I didn't want to fight it. I was like, all right, God, you direct it. I'm game
Sure.
for what comes up. And that came up. I'm like, all right, let's roll. So it was pretty interesting, and I went there once on a Wednesday night, pretty solid. Nothing culty about it. Left, and then I was driving home, and I take the same street every day, and I remembered, I'm like, hey, there's a Calvary Chapel right here next to my house. And I was like, it's like literally 2 blocks away from my house. I'm like, I wonder what that's going on there. And the reason I chose Calvary Chapel was because it's a very basic church, verse by verse, nothing fancy. It is what it is.
Sure.
There's a lot of weird stuff going on, which is perfectly good. There's a couple of things here and there, that's kind of weird, but hey, man, you can look past it
Sure.
because it's for the weird stuff.
Yeah.
So, so I went there. I saw the morning service. And you know what? I'm like, I'm gonna go there, check it out. I went there on Wednesday night. It used to be a house, but now it's a church. And there's like about 100 seats, and not even like 80 seats inside. I walked in there Wednesday night. There's about 20 people. The pastor was wearing like a type of a Hawaiian shirt with jeans.
Which
And
I'm sure you weren't used to.
no, not at all. I was using, slick back hair, three-piece suit, gold watch.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, perfectly immaculate. And then the assistant pastor was like a guy that's my same age with a beard, hipster looking dude. And I was like, all right, cool,
Had you
cool.
ever been in a church like that before?
No, never.
That wasn't. I mean, had you been to any church besides that your last church?
No, never, never.
Wow. See, this was just like
Blasphemy, man.
completely foreign. Yeah,
Yeah, and,
blasphemy.
and and he was wearing sandals. I'm like, what do you mean you're wearing
Oh
sandals? You don't wear
no,
open toe shoes.
heretic.
Yeah, you don't wear open toe shoes in church.
Wow.
Yeah, so I went in there, and then the pastor started just teaching. He's like, all right, they just started the whole entire Bible again. He's like, open up your Bibles to Genesis, chapter 7. They had just missed the whole. Oh no, Genesis chapter 5, because they're on 5 already. And I was like, oh snaps, they just
You're
started the Bible.
behind.
Yeah, Genesis 5, and I was like, whoa. And the message was good. The message was straightforward, and I was like, man, this place is. They start off with singing and worship, and then I was like, whoa, what is this place? This place is chill, relax. And then he's and then when it's time to ask for money, he's like, all right, you guys, tithing box in the back. You guys want to give? All right. So, hey, let's go ahead and bring the pastor up. And that was it. Like not even a minute, not even 20 seconds of like, hey, you guys want to give? And that was it of money talk. That was it. And I was used to a whole 45 minutes, an hour and a half of just give.
Yeah.
So that blew
Yeah.
my mind right there. And I left tonight completely in tears. I remember I got into my car, and I don't want to sound like I'm just like this guy who cries all the time, because
I was gonna say
but
this is
just
like third or fourth
yeah,
time.
yeah. But it's because these are like pivotal moments in my life, and
Yeah.
where God just punches you in the gut, and he goes boom, and you go, oh God. And yeah, I'm like, dude, this place it's safe. It's safe,
Dang.
And
That's
so
awesome, man.
I went back next Wednesday, and they talked about Genesis 6, and it was pretty straightforward. The pastor gave both of the views. He says, yeah, it could have been Sethite, it could also have been Nephilim, these angels that made with women. And then it also talks about it in the book of Enoch, and you can go ahead and read in the book of Enoch if you want. Just be careful. Always
Permission
go
to
back
read
to
a different book?
yeah.
What?
He said, he's like, go back to the Word of God always. We always want to go back to the Bible. It's our foundation, and it's interesting. And then he moved on, and I was just like, what? Where am I? Is this real life? So yeah, and I haven't stopped going since. I haven't
Dude,
stopped because they do a lot of good stuff. It's a small church, but they're always busy. They're always giving food to the homeless. They do workshops there. They help out the community. They do a lot of every Sunday they give food out for free to all the local people in my area.
right.
They go out. I don't know. They're doing it, man.
Sounds like the real deal,
Like a
buddy.
little bit of people doing it.
Yeah, that sounds like the
Yeah,
real
they're
deal.
doing
I
it,
mean,
and
I'm so pumped. Like, you made it through the other side, man. And a lot of times it takes people a lot longer, but it seems like, I mean, obviously, since you were a young kid, like you had the hunger, you had that hunger, but you were just trapped in kind of a weird system, and
yeah.
yeah, man, that's good. I'm happy for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm still going. It's been a year. I'm 33 and a half now, so It's been exactly 1 year and 4 months since I've been going there. 3 months since I've been going there, and amazing people, man. The pastor, the assistant pastor, all those guys. You know, I'm still
And you
kind
feel
of in the closet when it comes to a lot of the weird stuff.
yeah, but it kind of sounds like your pastor and those guys might be a little bit in the closet with the weird stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
that's usually how it is, especially for church leaders. I mean, I'm telling you, a lot of them, especially when you spend a lot of time researching for, sermons and such. I bet they've spent a little bit of time in the weird stuff.
they've accidentally clicked on that Ellie Marzulli.
Yeah. You know what you should do? You should just share like a Future Quake or a CCR or something. Text it to them and be like, "Oops, sorry, that was for someone else."
Yeah, okay.
Disregard.
And it was like, by the way, your services are no longer required.
By the way,
Come on, man, I just started going there.
No, I'll wait maybe another year before you sabotage their trust and your sanity.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I talked to them about things, but like, I mean, it was just like money advice from Dr. Future. That's why me and my buddy, we started that podcast, and because we needed an outlet,
Yeah, for sure.
Needed something. I'm sure you can relate. We needed somewhere to not only vent, but to let people know. We needed something to just, this is it, man. Wake up.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. I mean, that's exactly how we started. Now, yeah, I was going to say I wanted a good time to bring up your podcast just so you can give it a little plug. We'll do links at the end, but tell me about your podcast. What's going on there?
Well, it's kind of like, if anything, I would say it's like it's a combination of many podcasts, because I've listened to a lot of them, a ton of them, and it's just like a bit of everything. We created this, it's kind of, I would say it's kind of like it's a conglomerate of our styles, because we're just real, just me and my buddy. It's just us, and we're just keeping it real. We're just saying it how it is.
Right.
We're just telling people from our point of view, from our experiences, because
it's how you do it, man.
Yeah, we come from the same. We grew up in the same church, so our background is the same. So we're more on the supernatural, hyper charismatic point of view. So we approach a lot of those subjects from that end, and it's just a combination of a lot of different podcasts, and we decided to have a very unique format where we start off with the story. We start off with, first half is the first part is a story, a news article, something, an introduction. Then the middle is the guest. We have a guest, or we just talk to each other about certain subjects, fringe subjects or whatever. And then the second half is just a breakdown of what the episode was and what to look forward for the next one.
Nice, man. That's awesome. How come I haven't gotten an invite yet?
Because you have rejected us. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't even start. Did you see that? Did you see that on Facebook? Anyways, some people. Anyways, I'm not gonna get into it. But yes, don't worry. I won't reject you. You let me know.
Okay. No, yeah. Well, I mean, we started off. We've been doing it for almost a year now. We've been doing it for 10 months and 11 months, 10 months, and man, thank God, it's just been little by little, it's been growing, and right now it's growing a lot with the last 3 episodes, because we've also been getting other guests, like we had Ellie Marzulli on.
There you go.
The Godfather. We had big names in order to put it out there. We had Brian Godawa. We just released that one today.
Attaboy.
So yeah, we've been talking to a lot of people, and the way we've been setting it up is that just trying to get guests, because we try to release it every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks we have a new episode, because we're both busy. I have a family. He has kids, and we both work, and we'd like to podcast every day, all day, every day, but we can't.
Yeah.
So
no, that's good. You gotta set a realistic standard.
Yeah, and we talk about French stuff. We talk about a lot of the classic stuff, but from our unique perspective.
Nice. Well, awesome. Sounds good. We'll give some links for that at the end, and then we'll post it in the show notes there, so everybody can go take a look at it.
Right on.
All right. Well, that's awesome, man. And first of all, let me say you've been an excellent guest because you made the transition at almost the exact right moment into talking about the conspiracy stuff, and you hit the nail on the head for. I mean, you basically answered all the questions I usually ask people, so this was an easy one for me.
I mean, I'm used to listening to podcasts, man. I'm
I
usually
like.
used to the flow. That's why we started our own podcast, Fire Theft Radio, because we
I know.
needed to.
No, you're a natural, man. I
Put
love
it out
interviewing
there.
podcasters. It's really easy.
Yeah, yeah, and we're planning on doing a series, a 2-part series on our testimonies. I
Sweet.
guess the extended versions of what this is. You know,
Yeah, so this will be a
we
little
go.
teaser.
Yeah, we're gonna go in depth. You know, we're gonna go in depth, probably a 2 to 3 part series, a couple of hours of everything we went through, because there's so much more, man. Like, because we were involved in deliverance, casting demons out of people. What the heck is up with that?
Well, right. We'll
We were
see. Oh
involved
my
in
gosh. Yeah, we're about to open
stuff.
up a
Yeah.
whole new.
Oh
About to
yeah,
open up
because
a whole new thing.
yeah, because before they were demons and demons were angels, but hey, guess what? They're not. They're the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. What's up with that? And then healing ministries, and then the whole emotional intelligence stuff with Mike D. That blew my mind. That right there, I want to say thank you so much, from the bottom of my heart, for putting that man into my life, because he helped me so much 6 months ago. He lives right here next to our house. Actually, he was like 2 cities over, and we met up
Nice.
with. Yeah, we met up with him. We've gone to his church over here that he has, and we met up with him, had lunch, and man, he's been such a big blessing. Emotional intelligence, jeez, if
Dude,
you ever needed
you're
anything.
hooked in, man. You're hooked in. You're a lucky guy. Hey, if I didn't start the podcast, I would hope that I would be as connected as you are. So that's awesome. Yeah, good old Mike D. I'm always tempted to give him another call, but I mean, he's the only one so far to be on twice, and I'm thinking I might just have to have him on like every 10 episodes or something.
If you'd had him on every other episode, I wouldn't mind, man. Because we had him on too. We had him on the show. We had
Yeah.
him twice. We had him once talk about biblical context, because
Uh-huh.
he's also a pro at that, and then we
Yes, he
also had
is.
our own emotional intelligence episode.
There you go.
And had emotional intelligence. It ran for like almost 3 hours. That thing blew my mind.
It needs to get out there, man. It needs to be out there more.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, we can't. I don't know. We'll be here for another 2 hours talking about emotional intelligence.
Well, we can talk a couple minutes about it. We've got 15 minutes until 2 hours, and of course I'll ask you about your pets.
I told my wife.
Juicing.
She's all like, "How long are you gonna be out there for?" I'm like, "Probably like an hour, maybe."
Yeah, right. Sorry, wife. Does your wife do any of the podcasting? What does your wife think about all this with the Nephilim and things like that?
She's on board, man. She still hasn't left the old church, because she has a lot of friends and people. Because
Oh.
I mean, we grew up. We have a ton. All my friends are over there. All my
Yeah.
family members, everybody's over there. My mom, my dad, they also go to that church, dude. Everybody thinks like I abandoned. My dad, for the longest time, was like, "Hey, man, you can't have anything in your heart against God, against the church." And I was like, "Dude, do you think I left the church because I have something against it?" I'm like, "I left it because it wasn't biblical." Yeah, we used to get into it a lot, but we don't. After Mike D, I don't get into it with him anymore. I
There
just
you go.
empathize, and I love him, and Calvary Chapel, so I just pour love into him, brother.
Yeah, attaboy. I was gonna ask about that actually. I mean, that's gotta create some interesting conversations. I mean, the only time
Yeah,
I've
we don't
ever
really. Yeah.
Oops, sorry. We lost signal there for a second, but yeah, I
Oh,
mean, it sounds like you, especially after some emotional intelligence from Mikey D, really that would help with the
yeah,
situation, leaving that
yeah,
church and having everybody still be there.
yeah, it did. And my wife, she's on the verge of leaving too. She comes back and she says, you know what they talked about today? I'm like, "Tell me, woman, I know." Yeah.
I bet it was tithing. I bet it was a lot of tithing.
Yeah, yeah, 9 out of 10 times it's some funky stuff, and I was like, "Yeah, I know," and I just, I love her, and empathize with her, and I know she's gonna leave. I pray, and it's pretty weird, man, how it went full circle. How my dad left and my mom went to another church, and how I left his church, and my wife is still in the other church.
Yeah, that is kind of funky, isn't it? Wow, that is interesting. That was like a
Yeah, thinking
full
about that.
circuit there. Well,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, Omar, this has been fantastic. I had no idea that I was going to have such a perfect guest on the show.
Come on.
So, thank you for preparing your pages and pages of notes and your script that you had
Ah,
prepared,
no,
because it was
I have no
obviously
stand.
so well articulated. No, but that was great, man. So, you know, we're coming up on 2 hours here, so I'm going to start trying to land the plane here. But was there anything that was just burning on your heart you wanted to talk about before we got off? No pressure, but we can totally make it happen.
No, no, that was pretty much it, man. It was just,
Okay. You
I
know
mean,
what?
there's other stuff to talk
You know
about,
what?
but I think
Somebody's
we'll
gonna
get to that
take
one.
me up on that offer, that Burning Hearts offer, at some point, and I'm not gonna know what to do. Oh.
Well, bringing my heart that I like to say. Um, no, I'm just kidding.
Well, we better
I'm
hurry up
just,
here.
man. No.
It kind of sounds like our signal's breaking up a little bit, so I'm gonna go ahead and land this plane
Yeah.
so we can do it nice and smooth. So tell me about your free friends, buddy.
I have two dogs and a goldfish that refuses to die, and I
That
live
is
out in the
awesome.
country over here. Yeah, I live over here in Riverside, so we have cows and horses and goats and all that stuff
You
over here.
have them like you own them?
No, the
Uh,
neighbors do, but it's practically because they're always in our yard, so we've got to chase the chickens out, and the dogs kill the chickens and eat them.
oh yeah, that'd
So
be a bummer. Well,
yeah,
that's funny.
so
Yeah, we had Jack on the 2 episodes. By the time this comes out, 2 episodes ago. You know, you got to teach him how to get that goldfish to live, man. He can't seem to get a goldfish to last very long.
oh, I know it's one of those second-rate goldfish from the fair too. My daughter won it,
Oh,
and they're not meant to
fair
live more.
fish?
Yeah, dude, those things aren't meant to live like past 3 days. They're like belly up already.
That's crazy.
Um, yeah, but I think it's all that Florida in the water that made him resilient.
Yep, it's preserving
Like
him.
like a tender fish or something. It's pretty cool.
Well, how about Juice? And does your wife have you on a health regiment yet?
I have myself on one because I gained some baby weight, so
Attaboy.
like, yeah, doing a lot
Atta-
of intermittent fasting, so that's pretty good.
there you go. Hey, you bring up a good point. The male baby weight. I hear that's totally a thing.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. I don't know if there's scientific research to back it up, but for sure it is. I've experienced it twice now, and yeah, I was like down to I was one like 190, and then I went all the way up to like 230 with this baby, and
Bro,
I was like, I couldn't
that's
even.
what happened to
Yeah,
me. That's what happened to me last year, and I didn't even have a baby. I just finished taking all that weight off.
I know, and it was horrible, and so I couldn't even. I was like a size 40 almost. I was like, I couldn't even fit into my pants.
Woo!
Like my skinny jeans were like ultra skinny.
You
They're
looked
like
like
tight.
some stuffed sausage walking around.
Pretty much, dude. And so yeah, so I was like, what do I do? I need to lose weight. So you know, somebody told me about intermittent fasting. I was like, what is that? And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, this is a pretty good lifestyle. And so far it is. I don't see it as diet or anything. It's just a pretty sweet lifestyle. Just don't eat any breakfast. I wake up early anyways. I'm up at 4 anyways.
Yeah,
So
intermittent fasting. What is intermittent fasting?
so you fast for 16 hours and you have an 8-hour window to eat. And so you eat two huge meals within those 8 hours. So for example, if you fast from the time you go to sleep from 8 in the morning to 8 o'clock. So from 8 at night is the last time you have a meal, all the way up till 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And then somewhere around 12 to 1, you eat a big meal, which is usually, like baby greens, feta cheese, bacon bits, uh, things like that on a huge salad with aioli dressings or like olive oil dressing on it. Huge, huge amount of salad. And you eat that, and then for your dinner, pretty much something healthy or whatever you want.
Yeah.
That's it. 2
Wow,
meals,
that's
and then
interesting. I've
rinse and
never
repeat.
heard of that.
Yeah, you do the same. Yeah, you do the same thing every day. And I started this 6 weeks ago, and I was at, like I said, 229. I'm down to 208 right now. So.
Hey, attaboy.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, no sweet off the sweets, of course. All the junk food that you're used to. Pretty much it, man. So it's pretty good.
Right
Plus, my
on.
wife, she's like, oh, freak. It's like kombucha and organic stuff and stuff like that. So I go with the flow.
There you go. Well, that's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear that. You're getting it under control. I'm gonna have to try out that intermittent fasting thing.
Yeah, look it up. It's not too. It's a lifestyle. You know?
I mean, it sounds pretty close to like what I naturally do, anyways. If I just start
because
paying
I've heard
attention.
you do a lot of. Yeah, I heard that you do a lot of juicing. I've listened to you, and you do a lot of juicing and things like that. And it's kind of like that already. Just pretty much skipping a meal. You skip breakfast because the science says you really don't need breakfast. I'm no health expert. Please nobody quote me on stuff. What I've researched
Internet
done
science.
is that breakfast. Pretty much breakfast is you don't need it.
Omar, I'm losing you.
Eat, but
I'm losing
Illuminati.
you. Illuminati. All right, buddy. Before we're gonna catch this before I totally lose you. All right.
All right.
So why don't you give us some links for your podcast?
Oh yeah, it's firetheftradio.com, and then iTunes. You can listen to us on iTunes. Pretty much any podcatcher that you guys have. We're on there at Fire Theft Radio, Facebook Fire Theft Radio, Instagram Fire Theft Radio. We're
all right.
Pretty much everywhere.
Sounds good. We're gonna get you everywhere, buddy. We're gonna get people over there checking it out. Sounds awesome. Hey, Omar, I gotta say again one more time. I know I'm falling all over myself, but you're a wonderful, perfect guest. Thanks for coming on the show. And hey, let's keep in touch, buddy. We can let's co-op some things.
Yeah, baby.
Yeehaw! All right, man. Well, say goodbye to the listeners, and I'll let you get back to the wife and the babies.
I'm probably asleep by now. All right. Hey, thanks a lot, Basil. And before you go, one more thing, man. Really, thank you. I don't know if you hear it enough, but thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I really know that Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit really used you, man, and has been using you so much, and what you do, and in this podcast, the Joyspiracy Theory, because it does bring joy. You may not think it, but it does. It helps us so much to hear when we're in this whole funk of the conspiracy side, that we do need this, and a lot of people don't realize it, but it helps us listening to the testimonies of other people and how we can relate to them. So, thank you so much, and I always keep you in prayer, man. You and Gons, I have you guys in my prayer book, and we're always praying for you guys. So thank you so much for what you do, man.
Well, thank you so much, man. That's really cool to hear. And, I'm sure you know this as a fellow podcaster now, but sometimes you just put stuff out there and you don't know why you're doing it or what God's going to do with it. So I praise God for what he's doing, and thank you very much. It really is confirming to hear that people actually listen.
I'm living proof. Seriously, dude, I'm living proof that the seed that the Holy Spirit put in you years ago was worth it. Because that's what I told Chuck, me and my friend. I'm like, dude, if one person can get it, that's it. We're done.
Amen, man. Amen. That's good. Yeah. No, I thank God all those times that we were wondering why we're doing that. Hey, man, I know for sure at least part of it was for you, buddy. So we can both thank Jesus for that.
I do. Thank you.
Amen, man. All right. Well, you have a good night, and you and I will talk later.
Oh, for sure, dude. Thanks.
All right, man. Take it easy.
Later.
Well, there you have it, folks. Hope you enjoyed that, and thank you so much, Omar. What an awesome conversation. And everybody, make sure to check out Fire Theft Radio. Just do a little Google search there, firetheftradio.com. It's going to be awesome. Go do it. Go do it now. Can never have too many sources of information and happiness and joy and, just Christ's love. So thank you so much. Anyways, I want to give one more shout out to the Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chelsea. And if you guys are interested in taking part in giving to this podcast, helping it stay around. We got to pay for the websites and the bandwidths and the services that keep this thing running. You're totally welcome to do that. Go to patreon.com/thejoyspiracy theory. And oh boy, am I excited. Oh boy, am I excited for the new beta live streaming that they've got going there. Hopefully in a couple weeks I can start playing around with that and we'll all have fun together. If you haven't done it yet, go to facebook.com/thejoyspiracy theory, like the page, get all the updates. It's just a good place to get reminders, and a lot of times people are posting fun stuff there. Make sure to email tjtprayer@gmail.com if you want to join on up with the prayer team, and or send your prayer requests there. Yeah, that'll be fun. If you could, leave a rating and a review on iTunes or whatever you use to listen to this podcast. I'm currently trying to get it on for Android users. If you're an Android user and have not found it, I apologize. I'll figure that out. We're figuring it out together. But if you leave a rating and a review, that'll help. 5 stars is super awesome love fest for the Joyspiracy Theory. 1 star is just sad. It's just sad. And a review is just telling people why so many stars, or why 0 stars. I didn't even know that was possible. Woo! Yeah. Okay. You guys get the point. All right. Well, let me look over the notes here. I'm not seeing anything else to talk about. No. Okay. Good. Well, there will be no episode next week. I apologize. I'm going to be out of town. I tried to cover most of the time I was gone, but I will be back the week after with an awesome episode for you. And we'll just keep the joy train rolling. And remember, we've got that voicemail tab on the right-hand side of thejoyspiracytheory.com. Go ahead and leave me a message. A cat left me a message. You get to hear that soon. So make sure to tune in the next episode and we can join together for joy. Get it?